evening, Canterbury. Welcome to this extra edition of Newsmakers. It was once our city's most bustling suburb. It gave birth to the novelty of Saturday shopping and thrived. But New Brighton has struggled since deregulation crashed ashore, and the controversial quest for regeneration is yet to be realised. This week we turn the spotlight on New Brighton, and we'll have a panel discussion on some topical issues shortly. But first up, we're joined by a Brighton-bred boy who has just launched his tribute book to the seaside suburb that shaped his life, Gods and Little Fishes. The author is Bruce Ansleys. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
What motivated you? What inspired you to write the account, Bruce?
Well, nobody else has told New Brighton's story, so it was about time it was told. And because it's such a unique place. There's no other place like it in the country still. It's kind of parable for New Zealand, isn't it? It's,
in terms of what happened to the country?
Yeah, it was once, I'm not saying we weren't entirely prosperous, but the New Brighton certainly was, and now it's not.
What really shines through from your formative years in the book is the fact that New Brighton was such a tight-knit, self-sustaining, fully equipped township. You had it all, right? Yeah,
township, town. Totally separate from the city. My book was launched last night, and I think a lot of people made that journey over the Seaview Road Bridge and down to the Working Men's Club. Yeah. A bit of trepidation. You know, a lot of them hadn't been there before, certainly not in the Working Men's Club, which is incidentally now the New Brighton Club. Yes. Progress.
I love how you so vividly recall so many of the personalities who have made New Brighton tick over the years, from the ice cream seller, Mrs. Head, who seemed like a very fearsome woman, I have to say.
Well, she was fairly fierce that day.
Yes, yes. Tell us about some of the identities that stand out for you.
Well, just dealing with her, Mrs. Head, she, we were putting money into an orange drink machine. Bingo. We got, every time we started getting free drinks out of the machine, we thought this was great. And she suddenly roared out of the shop and said, "What are you boys doing?" And we were thoroughly ashamed of ourselves. You know, I mean, that's the trouble. That's, that's a good thing about living in a very small and tight community. When you do something wrong, you hurt somebody, and you're confronted with the person you've hurt. There was Pedro Herrick. Ron Herrick was his real name. He owned Herrick's Electrical. And old Ron used to like saying that he commuted to work by surf ski. He had the second surf ski on the beach, and he'd put his suit and his stuff on, coat on a plastic bag, and tie it at the front of his surf ski and paddle along the beach from his house down in South Brighton and cruise in under the pier, leave his surf ski there and go and get changed. And of course there was Bill Liddy, the famous Bill Liddy, the everybody's scoutmaster. Yes. And
I'm intrigued how you characterise the wider city's relationship with New Brighton and the long-standing urban snobbery, perhaps. Has Christchurch looked down on New Brighton?
Absolutely. A Brighton boy. Yeah, we were always seen as slightly rascally, you know, and I think we still are to a degree. I say we, even though I now live in Sumner, because I married a Sumner girl, and that was a compromise. But Christchurch has always had this funny idea about its seaside. It chooses to live on the other side of town. It doesn't want to go anywhere near it. It blames the Eastleigh, but Eastleigh winds sweep the coast of Long Island, which is one of New York's most desirable areas. So I don't think you can blame it on the Eastleigh. I think it's an attitude.
It's interesting you mentioned Sumner, because I think this is a question that has lingered on a lot of people's minds in Christchurch. Why has Sumner gone ahead in leaps and bounds, and Brighton has struggled?
Yeah, why? If you go down Brighton now, the main street it's lined with trees. It's got some interesting-looking shops. It's nice and shady. It looks everything, to my mind, the seaside town should be. Yeah. But it lacks people, and it certainly lacks the kind of people that Sumner has traipsing through it all the time. And Sumner is warmer, I think, and it's slightly more out the Eastleigh, but nonetheless, there's some inexplicable quality about the town and its relationship with New Brighton. And don't ask anybody in New Brighton to explain it, but they all kind of revel in it in a way. Yeah.
The book is a roller coaster ride. You know, it packs an emotional punch. There are tear-jerking moments. It's hilarious, laugh out loud at times. Who do you think is going to find this book particularly appealing? Who have you pitched it at?
Well, it's really a parable for New Zealand, and so it, I think, will appeal to a lot of people who have been interested in the way the country has gone over the last 20 or 30 years, which are quite a few of us. And you know, New Brighton is a kind of microcosm of that. So, of course, it'll appeal to New Brighton people, but I think it's actually a story of New Zealand.
I just want to touch on Saturday shopping with you before we go to the break. And of course then the great change occurred and continued through the 80s and 90s to the whole landscape of New Zealand. Do you think that was just a quirk of history, that New Brighton had that sort of day in the sun with the monopoly over Saturday trading? I mean,
it was a quirk of history. You try and find out why it happened.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was from memory by a special act of Parliament.
Yes.
And why New Brighton was singled out, it was partly because it was a seaside town, and it was supposed to be where Christchurch would go at the weekend, so it needed that Saturday shopping. And it certainly got it. I mean, Christchurch used to flood into that town, as you know. On Saturdays, you couldn't walk down the main street. It was just so chocker.
Do you think, in your wildest imaginations, such a monopoly could ever be created again?
No, I don't. I think that era is well and truly past. Probably a few shopkeepers in New Brighton will mourn that. I think what New Brighton would feel, though, is that all that life is gone.
Yeah. A question I'm going to ask Gail, Sheriff and David East after the break, I'll ask you first. Do you think New Brighton's best days are behind her?
I think quantifiably that's true, but if you're going to say, well, more good days lie ahead, I think that's probably going to be true as well. You can't let a town like that, right beside the sea, it's not going to languish like that forever.
All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, we are going to be joined by two community leaders, along with Bruce Ansley, to discuss a whole lot of topical issues that I'm sure you are familiar with. Do stay with us.